Welcome to the HMO Property Show. By investors, for investors. Catch us weekly as we discuss all things cash flow positive property investing. Whether you're a seasoned investor, a new landlord, or just curious about property investing, this is the podcast for you. Sponsored by the Co-Living Collective, your trusted partner in creating vibrant and sustainable shared living experiences. Visit us at colivingcollective.com.au to learn more.
Welcome back to the HMO Property Show. I'm your host, Neil Gibb, as always, and today I want to give you the top 20 tasks of a normal property manager, and then we're going to give you another 20 tasks on top of that a HMO property manager would do that are different to a standard property manager. But when I give you the first 20 tasks of a standard property manager, I want you to think that this is for both standard and HMO, because the first 20 the HMO property manager does, and then I'm going to give you the additional. And I'm hoping that this podcast will give you a bit of an insight into the additional workload that a HMO property manager has compared to a normal property manager. Not to take anything away from normal property managers. They do a good job if you get the right one. And they also have a lot of work to do, as you'll see in this podcast. But yeah, I just wanted to use this to highlight the additional tasks that a property manager does in a HMO, because they are a little bit different when it comes to management. It's not we're not just putting one family in there and doing an inspection every quarter or every 6 months. There is a lot more work to be done. So I won't dig too deep into them because it would be death by information. But I will just give you the top 20 of each, and then you can dig in a little bit deeper. Check if your property manager's doing them, and if they're not, give them a kick. Alright, so number one, obviously we need to advertise the vacant properties to attract the tenants. Now to do this, we're going to need some quality photography, or they will need some quality photography. I would always recommend getting professional photography done. You pay for it once, you've got it for the duration of the property, and you get the right photography online, makes you stand out differently to everybody else. Number two, tenant screening. They've got to conduct background checks and verify tenant information. Now, there's a variety of ways this can be done. They can do reference checks. They can do reference checks with where they work or where the tenant says that they work. They can also use a platform called Ticker, which is a tenancy database. And you can go on there and see all their rental history and past information as well. Number three would be lease negotiations and management of the property. So they will prepare, negotiate and manage the lease agreements themselves. Now, the negotiation can go anywhere at the minute. In the Perth market, they could advertise the property for 500 and someone could put an offer in for 600, and then someone else could come in at 610, 620. Doesn't necessarily mean the highest bid is going to win. It means the person that's more suitable to take on the rental at that property will most likely win. In the standard property management world, a lot of these people get presented to the owner, and the property manager would pick potentially their top three, present the top three to the owner, and the owner would pick that person to move into them properties. In the HMO world, it's a little bit different because the property manager needs to manage the harmony inside the property. So prepare, negotiate and managing lease agreements. Number four, this is probably the most important one, rent collections. Collect the rent and manage the arrears on behalf of the owner of the property. Number five is property inspections. Now, property inspections will generally tie in with your insurance as well. So if you're not getting regular property inspections done with photographic evidence, detailed property inspections, then you could be voiding your landlord policy that you have with whoever you have it with. So make sure you're getting these in. They should be getting one done at the start of a lease. When somebody moves in, you should be getting them done quarterly, or at the very least every 6 months, and you should be getting them when somebody moves out as well. Number six, they need to manage all of your maintenance and repairs on your behalf. This can be anything from a leaking tap right through to a leaking pipe in the ceiling that's potentially caused damage to your plasterboard and insulation and all that other stuff. So it can be simple maintenance, and it can also be quite extensive maintenance as well. Number seven, they will have to take care of all your financial reporting. Now, there is some software, well, not some software. If any property manager is still running your financials using Excel, then shoot them, because there's so many good pieces of software out there right now. Property Me, Property Tree, God, the list goes on. We use Property Me internally here at the HMO Property Co and J&G, or now formerly known as Living Rooms. Now we've done the brand move. Property Me connects direct to the bank. When all the rents drop in every day, next day you reconcile them to each property. It essentially lands in that bucket, and then at the end of every month it gets dispersed to the owners. And then at the end of every year, you can just click a button and download a financial statement for the owner, send that across to them. It gives them all the income, all the expenses, and then they give that to their accountant when it comes to tax time. Number 8 is bond collection and lodgement. Now, collecting bonds and lodging them with the relevant state authority, it's got to be done within a certain time frame as well here in Western Australia. So yeah, it's very important that it is collected. It's generally 4 weeks bond that they would collect on your behalf, and then they'll lodge that with the bond administrator. It's a pretty cool little process that they've got going in now. You lodge it with all the tenant's details, and the tenant then signs something that says yes, it's been lodged. And then when it gets released, if the property manager doesn't want to hold any money back for any repairs or anything like that, then it just goes straight back to them. If it has to, let's say we have to hold $200 back for some chip paint in a bedroom, then the tenant has to agree for that $200 to be deducted from the bond, and then it gets released to them as well. Number 9, normal property manager has to handle tenant complaints, so they have to address and resolve issues raised by the tenants. These could be anything, again, from maintenance to issues with the neighbours to issues with the driveway to any kind of issues that they would come up with, and the property manager would deal with these. Sometimes they would do it without involving the property owner. Sometimes they will go back to the property owner to get permission from them to do whatever needs to be done. Number 10, emergency management. Now this kind of ties in with tenancy complaints as well, but if there's any emergency maintenance and repair work needed up to a certain dollar, or if something's classed as an emergency repairs, then they can get them done without the authority of the owner. If it's a tenant complaint, like I say, if it's a leaking tap, or if the door that doesn't close properly, or a lock that doesn't work, or a light that doesn't work properly, that's not classed as emergency. If you've got a burst pipe, if you've got power off, you've got a gas leak, they're classed as emergencies, and the property manager can take care of them. Number 11, they will have to manage vendors and suppliers and coordinate with contractors, tradespeople and service providers. Again, they tie in nicely with the emergency management and tenant complaints, because generally when a tenant complains, it means that something needs to be fixed, which means a job needs to be raised, work orders need to be raised, and tradesmen need to be organised to go in there and fix the problem. Number 12 is property upgrades and renovations, so planning and overseeing property improvements. So if a tenant moves out, and let's say we've got an interstate investor, the property's in Perth, the investor lives in Sydney, which seems to be a very, very common occurrence right now, because we've got the flock of investors coming from the east coast to the west. Then the property manager can potentially be in charge of a renovation, and that could be anything from a cosmetic, liquor paint and some new carpets, to getting a bathroom retiled, maybe installing a new bathroom as well. It all depends on how good your property manager is at managing these things. You may need to engage an external builder or contractor to do this for you, and the property manager may just manage the access into the property. Number 13, they need to manage tenants moving in and moving out. Like I say, there's documentation that needs to be done, bonds that need to be released, inspections that need to be done. What else? That's probably about it. Oh, and then they need to obviously advertise the property to say that it's vacant again. So that's a little task that they've got to do. Number 14 is dispute resolution, so mediating disputes between tenants and landlords, and again this comes back down to handling tenant complaints. If there is any disputes between the tenant and the landlord, then the property manager would generally be the mediator between the two. Insurance management, handling insurance matters for the property. Now, if let's say a garage door breaks, you can potentially get this done through your insurance, or let's say the fence blows down, you can potentially get that done through your insurance as well, depending on how much your excess is, whether it's worth using your insurance or whether you just pay for it outright and save yourself a claim on your insurance policy. But the the property manager would need to manage this for you. it goes without saying, with the software that we've got in place now, that record keeping, number 16, they need to keep comprehensive records of property transactions and activities. Now, in a lot of the property management software that you use nowadays, it keeps all the historic data. You can archive tenants, you can archive properties, but you can also go back into that archive and pull them back out, and everything that's stored there would still be available for you as well. And number 17 is they need to manage the eviction process for you. Now, I'd love to just say that, owning properties and being a property investor and being a property manager is all rainbows and unicorns, but unfortunately it's not. We deal with people's circumstances change, their life circumstances change. They could lose their jobs, they can lose their partners, they can turn to the drink, they can hit drugs, they can party. All of these things can happen in people's lives, and as a property manager, we need to manage them. And if it comes down to eviction because people haven't been paying the rent, then the property manager will need to manage the legal process of evicting tenants if we go down that path. If we can get them out of the property without following any legal process or without going to court or SAT or anything like that, then the property manager will do that on your behalf. Number 18, they will need to analyse markets and review rents for you, so staying updated with market trends to advise landlords appropriately. This is a big one. Obviously, at the minute, the market is a little bit out of control. I don't know if anyone's following it, but I spoke to someone, I can't remember who it was, that came in my office last week. He said he applied for a rental property, and luckily he got it. There was 93 applicants went in for this property. 93 on a property. Absolutely bonkers out there right now, guys. I was looking at the REWA stats again. It's kind of like my little addiction at the minute. I look at them weekly to get the suburb data, and there's like 2,800 properties available on the market, 2,400 properties available on the market right now to purchase. Just absolutely crazy. So a property manager would need to try and analyse this market, and obviously if they've got other properties in the area, for the suburb expert, they will know what's been renting in them areas and how much they are renting for, and then they can adjust the rent accordingly to suit what's going on in that suburb. If the market is out of control like it is, I mean, it's kind of hard to say, yes, it should rent for $650, let's say, but there's so much FOMO going out there. Imagine you're one of them 93 people that missed out on that other property. What are you going to do in the next property? You're going to see that it's advertised for $650. You're just going to go in there with $700, aren't you? Because a lot of people think it's price driven, but it's not just price driven. It's also tenant driven as well. So there's an acronym out there called DINKS, which stands for double income, no kids. They are the perfect tenants for landlords. Double incomes, no kids. They've got good incomes, no kids, out at work all day, strong tenants, and a dink could probably get a dink could probably get priority over somebody that's got, not as favourable. So let's say a family that's got one income and 3 kids, and you probably think, the double income, no kids, as much as we want to help the family, that's probably more suited for me. It gives me more confidence that they're going to be in there long term. Number 19, they've got to do property market strategies. So they've got to develop strategies to maximise property exposure and desirability. And again, this comes down to photography, the copy that they write in the advert. At the minute, you could probably just put a photo online and say $650 per week, come and get it, and you get a queue of people there. But markets aren't always this strong. Markets go up and down. Everything corrects, and the market will correct in Perth eventually, but I don't think it's going to correct for at least another 3 to 5 years. Right now, the strategies to maximise your property exposure and desirability probably don't count as much because there's just so much demand out there, but it is something that needs to be considered from a property manager. And then number 20, they need a client relationship management. So they need to build and maintain relationships with property owners and tenants, because without any of these things, then they've got no income. Property managers only get paid when they've got tenants in houses or rooms and they receipt rent into their property management software. That's when they get paid. So they don't get paid when there's no tenants. They only get paid when there's people in housing. Okay, so that's the top 20 tasks of a standard property manager. Now I'm going to give you another 20 tasks that a HMO property manager does on top of all of them other things that I've just given you now. I'll just have a quick drink of water. Okay, so number one, they've got to maintain their HMO compliance. Now, depending on where your HMO, rooming house, lodging house, boarding house, new generation boarding house, whatever state you are in and whatever you want to call it, if it's got multiple rooms and multiple unrelated parties living there, then there will be a state-specific regulation to tell you what you can and cannot do with that property. Some state-specific regulations are more detailed than others. Some are pretty lax. Make sure that whichever state you're in, you are, or your property manager is, sticking to the regulations surrounding what you are allowed to do. Number two, they've obviously got to manage room by room tenancy, so it means you've got multiple people living in a property instead of just putting one family in there, nice and easy, close the door, see you in 3 months, guys, when we do the inspection. Room by room, we've got to make sure that the people in these houses are matching, so it's like personality profiling to a degree. A lot of people think this would be easier because you've got multiple people in one house, or it'd be easier for a property manager because you've got the 6 rooms in the one house. It's actually, that can be a little bit convenient that you've got them in such close proximity and you don't need to drive to 6 different houses. But then your rents on them rooms are a lot lower than what it would be for the standard property market. And then you've got to manage people's different personalities, and it can be quite challenging. Number 3, we've got to manage the shared facilities. I think this is one of the things that a lot of people don't realise, that we've got to oversee the maintenance of use of shared facilities like kitchens, bathrooms and living areas. A normal property manager wouldn't need to do that because there's just one family using it. That we need to send in cleaners, gardeners, all these things. We need to make sure that the common areas are working, maintain cleanliness, and good for everybody to use. Number 4, we've got to manage the fire safety of these properties. Now, we've had Dieter Wagner on the podcast, and we've also had Karen Tacken on the podcast. Together, them to form a very, what's the word I'm looking for? They form a critical component of, they are the critical component really of the insurance that we get. It all boils down to the fire safety installation that we do, which is the hardwired interconnected smoke alarms in each bedroom, the fire extinguishers, the evacuation lighting, the always free to exit lever handle on the front door. And this needs to be checked and maintained, and every 6 months your fire extinguishers need to be maintained, and every 12 months the fire alarms need to be checked, and a certificate needs to be issued off the back of that, and it needs to be relodged with the insurance provider so that we know, or so that the insurance underwriter knows that the installation is installed correctly to the Australian standard and is maintained to the Australian standard as well. So that's another thing your property managers in a HMO need to do. Number 5 is health and safety compliance for communal areas. Now, once you go over 6 rooms in a HMO 6 unrelated people. So if you have 7 unrelated people or more living in a house, then you are then classed as a lodging house, and there's health and safety act that you need to abide by. There's waste management plans, there's on-site managers. There is a lot more to it. We are delving deep into this right now at the HMO Property Co. We are expecting to get some of these things across the line pretty soon, because that is the next evolution of the business. So we've got to implement health and safety measures in the common areas. We do this at the minute by using house rules as well. So in the HMOs, when we first started the business, we probably had about 20-25 house rules. And as you can imagine, as the business has grown and we've had more and more people renting rooms from us, we have seen more and more things happen, which has made us put more and more rules in place, and we're probably nudging close to 60 house rules at the minute as well. And it's a 3-strike policy and you are out. If you do not abide by the house rules and you break 3 of them rules, then you're out, unless it's one of the big no-nos, which is drugs, violence, or abuse to other housemates, or violence towards other housemates, sorry. Okay, number 6, we've got to do tenant conflict resolution. Now, the normal property managers do tenant complaints and dispute resolution between tenants and landlords. Well, the HMO property manager has to manage tenant conflict resolution, immediate disputes amongst tenants sharing the common spaces. Now, again, this comes back to the house rules. Everybody's got to clean up after themselves after they use things. They've got to wash the pots and plates. They've got to put them back in the cupboard. They've got to make sure that they found the common areas. They leave the common areas as they found them. And, I'd like to say again that this runs really smoothly, but it doesn't always do that. We have people from all different walks of life, all different nationalities, all different backgrounds, and everybody grows up differently. And we'd like to think that ideally someone would come out, you cook something in a pan, put it on a plate. Whilst they're eating, they would clean the pan, put it back in the cupboard, wash the plate down, put that back in the cupboard, and go back in the bedroom. In an ideal world, we'd love that to happen. Doesn't always happen, so therefore your property manager will have to deal with these things. And we would never go back to our owners, our property investors, our clients, and say, oh, by the way, John, tenants 2 and 3 or bedrooms 2 and 3 are complaining about them leaving the knives and forks in the sink the other day. My wife and I built this property management business from the ground up specifically for this style of management, and everything that you would think of as an investor that could go wrong, we've already put a system or a procedure in place so that if it does go wrong, we don't have to come back to you as the investor and then get you to make the decision on it, because we've already hit their mistakes, we've already learned from their mistakes, we've already got them experiences, and we know how to fix that problem as well. Which leads me nicely on to utility bill apportionment. So I'm going to put a caveat around this. Included in everybody's rent now, I think we include $25 per person per week. If we get excessive electric bills, gas bills and water bills, what we do is we add them up across that quarter. We've got a spreadsheet that we bang the figures into, and then anything over the allocation of $25 per person per week, we then split that back across the tenants, and we invoice them and they pay the shortfall on that, or the over usage on that as well. That's something a property manager in a HMO has got to do, something that a normal property manager does not have to do. Number 8, we've got obviously frequent property inspections. So yes, the normal property manager does a property condition report and then a normal report. We've got to do a full house report when we take the property over, then we do a common area report, and then we do a report for each one of the bedrooms. Now, granted, it's still a house and it's still got multiple rooms in it, but it's very rare that you'd have a family renting a 6-bedroom, 6-bathroom house. So as you can imagine, the property condition reports and the property inspections are a lot more detailed than what they would be from a standard property management business. Communal cleaning arrangements, so we've got to manage the cleaners. Probably 18 months ago, 2 years ago, we actually hired cleaners internally and brought them on board into the property management business on payroll. Worst thing I've ever done. All of a sudden we've got these cleaners that were working hard and needing money as contractors, all of a sudden just kicking back, having 20 cigarettes a day, standing outside the houses, drinking coffee, obviously not getting the output out of them because they knew they had the wage coming in. So we went back and we started working with contractors again. And back in the days, we were getting cleaners for $25, $30 an hour. Now they are up around the $60 to $65 an hour, like rock stars at the minute, cleaners, same as bricklayers. Number 10, we've got furniture and appliance management. So we've got to provide and maintain furniture and appliances for communal use. Your property manager's got to make sure that they work all the time. If the washing machine goes down, you're going to know about it because you've got 6 people in there that need to use the washing machine. We've started putting 2 washing machines in our HMOs nowadays because we need the additional space in there for people. Number 11, we have community rules and regulations enforcement, so implementing and enforcing house rules specific to communal living environments. Like I say, it's gone from 30 odd, 25 odd rules to probably over 60 at the minute, but it is an absolute beast. Not enforcing them, but making people aware of them, because a lot of people won't read all the documentation that we send through to them. The house rules are visible inside the houses, but not everyone can remember all of the house rules, so sometimes some people might slip up without actually realising it. So as a property manager, we've got to step in, and we put ourselves as people managers first before property managers, because we need to make sure that the tenants in there are happy, so that you as the investor get the rental income that you deserve for investing in a strategy like this. So we're going to make sure that them house rules are enforced, but also at the same time make sure that we're not coming down too hard on people when they make simple mistakes. again, we've touched on number 2, which was room by room tenancy management, but individual room leasing means managing the leasing process on a per room basis. This is actually a little bit easier because, like I say, you've got the 6 rooms or 5 rooms or 4 room condensed into one property, but it's more documentation per property, less income per room than you would do per a property, but combine them rooms together, yes, it adds up for a lot more. So it makes it a little bit easier, but we do have to manage individual room leasing. This one's a little bit interesting. So our tenant vetting, housemate vetting, is a little bit different through HMOs. Your normal property manager will use software like Ticker, something like that, which is the national database for tenants. A lot of the tenants that we house in HMOs aren't on Ticker, because they have sometimes just moved into the country, or sometimes just moved out of the first home with the parents and it's the first time of living on their own and being independent. We might have people that have never rented before because they've been in a relationship and now they're just split up with a partner and they need housing. So we're finding that these tenancy databases aren't the greatest. We still check them now and again if we've got any real concerns, if their rental history says they have been renting. But we find the process that we've got in place is a little bit more different, a little bit more robust, and a little bit more detailed as well. So we do have to do things a little bit differently when we've got multiple people living inside one house. Tenant orientation for shared living. Now, a lot of people have not lived in shared accommodation previously. This is a shift in the market that's happening right now. The way that we used to live is changing. The way that the younger generation are coming through, and compared to the way that we came through, is different, and they want to live differently to us. But some of them, like I say, are coming out of relationships, and it's the first time they've lived in shared accommodation. Some of them are leaving home for the first time, and mommy's not there anymore, boys and girls, to do everything for you. So there is a little bit of guidelines that we need to guide them through, expectations, what they need to adhere to for living in this style of accommodation. So it's kind of like an education component that we need to have in there for managing tenants in a HMO. All the HMOs are fully furnished, so we've got inventory checks for communal items and for bedroom items as well. So we're not just doing property condition reports, we're doing inventory reports on everything too. And the amount of furniture that we put in these houses now is a lot. So the report that we do in them, and the check and the inventory, that's the word I'm looking for. The inventory that we need to do on them is quite detailed. So that's an additional step that our property managers need to do. Obviously, when we've got multiple people living in a property, same as normal tenants really, but we need a rapid response to maintenance issues. So especially if it's in a common area as well, if it's in someone's bedrooms, not too bad, but there's not a lot in a bedroom that can go wrong. So we need to be mindful that when a maintenance issue pops up, we're out there ASAP. Number 17, we need to facilitate tenant communication, so we need to encourage and facilitate effective communication amongst tenants. We also have been working very hard in the background with Happiness Co, and we're very close to launching our Housemate Support program. We nearly launched it about 12 months ago now, but the girl that was working on this, she left to go travelling. I think she's in Costa Rica or something like that at the minute. And we parked it because we just didn't have the headspace and the manpower to work on it. It's now getting worked on again, and it's going to be a platform to help tenants with mental health challenges and other tips and tricks to help maintain a happy and healthy house. Because again, if our tenants are happy, then that means they're going to stay in these properties, and that means our investors are happy as well. Alright guys, getting close to the end now. 18, 19, oh yes, number 18 is we need to monitor noise levels. So sometimes we can get complaints about noises, sometimes it's music, sometimes it's some tenants getting a little bit jiggy with each other. So yeah, I'll let you think about that one. So that's number 18. Number 19, we, along with the Housemate Support, we have community building activities. So we are looking at ways that we can organise events or initiatives to promote a sense of community amongst the tenants, because this style of accommodation is providing community. It's helping bring people back together. It's helping crush loneliness and the isolation, social isolation that's going on out there as well. That's number 19. I've run out of them. Right. I'm going to go with number 20. And I think I started off with this one as well. But number 20 is overcrowding prevention, which is monitoring the number of occupants to prevent overcrowding in line with regulations around the country. And again, depending on where you are, the amount of people that you can have in these properties without breaking the rules will change. So there you go, guys. There are my 20 top property manager tips and my 20 top HMO property manager tasks. Did I say tips or tasks? I can't remember. Either way, guys, hope you got some value from that. If you've got any questions, if you've got anything that you want to add on to these, flick me a message. I'd love to hear more about them. And I will see you all next week. Thank you.
Thanks for watching. Make sure you tune in the same time next week so you can stay up to date with all cash flow positive property updates.